The United States and Canada and our other allies and partners face several global challenges to the international rules-based order from which we have all benefited so much. While each of these challenges is daunting, recognizing that they are linked together, separate parts of one strategic whole, is an important step towards successfully and effectively defeating these challenges. What are the challenges, and why do I think they're linked? First and most dangerous as a near-term threat is Russia and its war of aggression against Ukraine and its gray zone actions against all of us. 10.5 years since, anytime somebody says the war is just past 1,000 days, you say, excuse me, it started 10.5 years ago. 10.5 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began with the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014, the Kremlin has done the following. Hundreds of millions of dollars invested to undermine our democratic processes and institutions, continuous threats of nuclear escalation by a permanent member of the UN Security Council, weaponization of refugees, beginning with its support for the Assad regime in Syria in 2015, which put millions of people on the road from the Middle East and Ukraine into Central and Western Europe, disruption of food and energy supplies, which has raised prices for all of us, the brutal murder of tens of thousands of innocent Ukrainian civilians, and the now routine execution of Ukrainian prisoners, and the risk of Russia extending its aggression into NATO countries if Ukraine should fail. The second big threat is Iran's decades-long destabilizing actions in the Middle East, with its support from multiple terrorist organizations to threaten Israel, as well as commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, and its desire to create a nuclear weapons program. Iran has no real ally other than Russia. Russia helps Iran with nuclear technology, and Iran sells Shahed drones and ballistic missiles to Russia. The third threat, of course, is North Korea and its continuing threats against South Korea and Japan. North Korea, which also has no other friend than Russia, is the largest external supplier of ammunition and ballistic missiles to Russia, and now provides thousands of troops to fight in Ukraine. Finally, China. The Chinese are watching closely to see if the West is actually willing to defend sovereignty, international law, human rights, and freedom of navigation. If we fail, if we don't stop Russia in Europe, then China will feel more confident about what it is already doing and might do in the future. While it watches the West, China is brazenly providing critical components and materials to Russia, which end up in missiles that kill innocent Ukrainian civilians. In the Indo-Pacific region, China is using its naval forces and commercial fishing fleet to threaten Vietnam and the Philippines in order to establish illegal claims to large parts of the South China Sea. China is using its Navy and Air Force to threaten and intimidate Taiwan, practicing a blockade of the island and rehearsing for a possible invasion at some point in the not-too-distant future. So how do we address these threats and challenges? How do we organize for victory against these challenges? Do we, the West, have the combined political will, industrial capacity, and military capabilities to address the threats by Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China to our strategic interests in the international rules-based order? It starts with Ukraine and defeating Russia first, just as the Allies, led by Churchill and Roosevelt, recognized in World War II that we had to defeat Nazi Germany first, and that the strategic objective was unconditional surrender, not looking for a more favorable negotiating position with Hitler or Emperor Hirohito. We must help Ukraine defeat Russia first, not as an act of charity or because of emotional reactions to the suffering inflicted on Ukrainian people by Russia, but because it's in their own strategic interest. I believe the clear definition of victory is that Ukraine ejects Russian forces back to the 1991 internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. And yes, of course, that includes Crimea. I'm always really annoyed when somebody says, and Crimea? Well, like, yeah. If you said, like, Canada and Alberta, yes, the whole damn thing. It should include the return of the tens of thousands of kidnapped Ukrainian children, accountability for Russian war crimes in the International Criminal Court, use of Russian funds to pay for Ukraine's reconstruction, and membership for Ukraine in NATO.